Many texts only discuss the growth of infant and toddler language development with isolated stages and distinct milestones. The reality is that in between isolated stages and milestones, language is growing month by month and even really day by day. In addition to presenting language milestones, we wanted to acknowledge the month-by-month growth in comprehension and production in early language development. Assessing early development of language skills is a challenging task, especially when the cooperation of the infant or toddler is required for a considerable amount of time, and when the tests administered demand the presence of highly trained examiners. The MacArthur-Bates Communicative Development Inventories, CDIs, are one of the best known and widely used reports completed by caregivers. The CDI was developed as a cost-efficient, reliable, and valid means for assessing early language skills, and importantly, for collecting data in large samples as required for establishing population-based norms. Initially developed for American English, the CDI has been adapted to more than 60 languages, reflecting their linguistic and cultural differences while allowing for cross-linguistic comparisons. To illustrate what language growth looks like over the first 3 years, let's examine some data from a study that investigated the early development of language skills in monolingual children between 8 to 30 months, learning European Portuguese as their native language. European Portuguese is a Romance language spoken by people in Portugal. Examining language growth in a language you are unfamiliar with can lead to unique insight about the potential universal trends of language growth for infants and toddlers. The language growth trends from this study will be presented and then compared to children acquiring other languages such as English. Developmental trends for vocabulary comprehension and production in infants by age and gender are given in figures 1 and 2. The results support the well-established pattern in language acquisition literature that children's receptive vocabulary extraordinarily exceeds their expressive vocabulary during the very first years of life. In addition, expressive vocabulary increased noticeably with age. In Figure 1, the 50th percentile represents the median trajectory of growth for language comprehension. Word comprehension shows a steady increase with age across all percentile levels, with girls scoring higher than boys for all age groups. The median scores, 50th percentile, increased to approximately double between 8 and 11 months, and then they doubled again by 14 months. More than 1/3 of the infants scored at the maximum level on the CDI, 90 words, at 18 months. Overall, mean scores were higher for girls than for boys. Figure 2 shows the growth trends in productive vocabulary for children between 8 to 18 months. At age 8 months, half of the infants did not understand more than 7 words. By 17 months, 50% of the children are able to understand at least 55 words, whereas they produce no more than 11 words. Moreover, from 8 to 18 months, children make more progress in receptive than in expressive vocabulary. Not surprisingly, individual differences are a constant in language development, as shown by the large range of scores within each month, with larger differences in receptive than in expressive vocabulary. In Figure 3, the 50th percentile represents the median trajectory of growth for language production in children from 16 months to 30 months of age. During this period, there is a substantial vocabulary growth, with the scores reflecting a gradual increase with age and a relatively stable variation across the age range. Between 18 and 22 months, vocabulary size nearly doubles. Girls consistently scored higher than boys for all age groups. The difference between average language production for girls and boys shows a slower beginning for boys as well as slower growth. After around 25 months of age, the gender difference starts reducing, but girls still use 10 more words than boys at 29 months. Figure 4 presents the month-by-month trend for the production of complex words by gender. Half of the children were reported to produce complex words by 26 months of age, and the percentage of complex word production rose from below 20% on average at 16 months to near 90% at 30 months, with girls showing a consistent advantage over boys at all age groups, and a faster growth in the production of complex words. A strong correlation was found between expressive vocabulary and production of complex words. That is, children who produced more language also produced more complex words. Figure 5 presents the developmental trend for combining multiple words by age and gender that indicates an already well-developed ability to combine words in early toddlerhood. Girls produced more multiple word combinations earlier than boys. In Figure 6, the scores from the CDI short forms for American English, Spanish, Galician, and European Portuguese are compared. The top graph shows language comprehension growth in children between the ages of 8 to 18 months, and the bottom graph shows language production growth in children between the ages of 8 and 18 months. These findings indicate that overall, developmental trends are similar across the 4 languages. Figure 7 presents the month-by-month vocabulary production scores for toddlers between the ages of 16 to 30 months across the 4 languages. As language production is limited during the first year of life, examining production from 16 to 30 months reveals much more growth. Furthermore, interesting patterns emerge between languages. Figure 7.1 presents the growth curves for the language production of 4,867 English-speaking toddlers between 16 to 30 months of age in the U.S., and Figure 7.2 illustrates the median growth trends for these children. The results indicate that developmental trends are more similar across languages in the younger ages, whereas strong differences across languages may emerge in older ages with language production. A gender effect emerges across languages, even in infant production data, strengthening previous reports of robust gender differences regardless of language. Figure 8 presents vocabulary production growth for 14 languages. Across many languages, there are early language differences by gender, often to the advantage of girls in the early months.